What up, everyone? Thank you for being here today, listening to the Diet Diaries. I'm getting a little ahead on my episodes because it's summer and schedules are weird. And so I'm not entirely sure when this episode's going to air because I have a guest coming to record next week that I'm really excited about. So this actually works out well because I'll have kind of like a couple episodes sort of quote unquote banked, and then I can decide what order I want to air them in. And then I'll probably take a week off. We're going to be on vacation. We're going to be in Maine for 10 days. So I will take a week off of the podcast that week, which is like in the middle of July. I'll give you a heads up as it gets a little bit closer, although this episode might be approaching that week. So it's going to be, what Monday is that? It's like Monday, July 20th, or I don't know, somewhere around there. I want to ask you guys for something today before I get started. Can you please, right now, as you are listening, go into, I think most of you are listening on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on Spotify, that's fine too. Please go and give the Diet Diaries a rating, just tapping the 5 stars. An actual review would be fucking lights out amazing. If you have a moment to write one sentence around why you like this podcast, why you listen to it, anything positive it's done for you, I truly will be eternally grateful. I haven't had a review written up there in like over a year, and most of them are like 3 and 4 years old. But even a star rating is amazing. If you're not going to rate it 5 stars, just don't rate it then. Just real talk. But if you are going to rate it 5 stars, it's so easy. All you have to do is tap it. And I don't ask for these things really ever, and I need to start asking for them more often because the ratings and reviews do make a difference in the visibility of the podcast. And I really just want the Diet Diaries to get into the ears of as many women as possible. Because I know how powerful what I am talking about here is. I know the conversations, one-sided though they may be, that I'm having here and creating here are not happening in many other places. I know I'm saying the hard, uncomfortable stuff that we need to hear but are sometimes afraid of. And I know that I am not just kind of like ranting and venting and like running a talk show, but I'm coaching you. I'm giving you skills to practice and try and go execute in your life and see what works and what doesn't work. And I'm really proud of this podcast, and it's going to be 6 years old in November. And that's a long time. There's a lot of people that start podcasts and don't follow through. And I have followed through every single fucking week for 6 years. The consistency of that, the longevity is something I am super, super proud of. So if you listen, if you know, whatever your feelings are, meaning if you love the podcast, if you'd give it a 5-star rating, I truly be so appreciative. It'll literally take like 1 second of your time to go do that right now as you're listening. Okay, let's get into it. So I actually have something kind of fun today. Every quarter, I go in and speak inside of a women's ultra running group. I've talked about that here before. And every time I kind of mention it, I'm like, I know it seems weird, an ultra running group, that's like outside my wheelhouse. I'm not talking about working out. I'm not talking about fueling for their runs. I'm going in and talking to these women about the things that we all struggle with. And I think what's really interesting about it that you might be surprised is that just because these women run ultra marathons doesn't mean that they don't have all the same challenges that you who are listening have, because they do. They are not like at their their quote unquote ideal weights. They are not all like super thin. They are not all happy and loving how their bodies look, right? There's this perception that people who do more kind of really challenging, I'll say even more like extreme, and I don't mean extreme like in a bad way, but ultras are definitely on like an outlier in terms of like a form of, movement and exercise and training. The people who do that like love how their bodies look or have this like ideal body type, and that could not be further from the truth. Something I've learned about the ultra community actually is that it's very inclusive, and there are actually probably more women with a greater representation of body types in that community than there is in kind of the quote unquote traditional like running / marathon community. It's been really interesting. So anyway, I adore this group. The women in here are so phenomenal, and I've gotten to know some of them over time because I've been doing this for several years now. So I just did kind of I guess it's our Q2 call. It's just a week ago, last Thursday. And we did a hot seat style, meaning I kind of opened up the floor and each woman came with a very specific question. And then I coached them individually for like 10 to 12 minutes. It was really cool and really fun. And so I wanted to actually talk through one of the specific questions that a woman came with, what her question was, how I coached her through it, and what her next steps were coming out of it. Because I think you guys are going to relate in such a huge way. And I think you're going to find this super helpful because it's going to feel like I'm coaching you, because that's how relatable this situation is. So here we go. I'm going to use a fake name just to protect her privacy. So we will go with Stacy. Okay. So here's what she shared with me. She is an ultra runner, but I don't believe that she actually has run a race recently. So she is quite active and does run a lot, but had not done, I think, an ultra race in like the kind of recent history. She has gained 15 plus pounds over the past year. She is fully in perimenopause. There were a couple times where she thought she was maybe in menopause because she'd gone like 5 or 6 months without a period, and then her period showed up. And you are officially in menopause when you have gone 1 year without a menstrual cycle. There's no blood test. You can't tell if you're in perimenopause or menopause. That is how you know. 1 year without a period. That is the clinical definition of menopause. So if you've gone 6 months and you get a period, you're not in menopause. You start all over again from that 6 months, which in some ways can be really frustrating for women because it's like you think you know where you are in the process, and then suddenly you get like thrown for a loop and you're like, oh fuck, it's like I'm starting over again. Really frustrating. So she is fully in perimenopause though, right? The fact that she's going these long stretches without a period really indicates that. And so she's gained weight. She's gained at least 15 pounds. She said probably closer to 20. Doesn't recognize her body, isn't happy with how she looks, clothes are fitting tight. Just, you guys can relate to this, right? She's in her mid to late 40s. I don't remember her exact age. And so here was the question. This was kind of a little bit of the backstory she gave me. And here was her question for me. Her question was, what do I need to be focusing on to deal with this? Is it protein? Is it fiber? Is it water? I'm not sure what I need to be focusing on. That was like her verbatim question to me. Everything I read says something different. Can you tell me what to focus on? Okay, this was her question. She wanted to know what she needed to fix this problem. Like, I must be doing something wrong, kind of like with the what. And so I listened to her and I listened to kind of a little bit of that backstory that I shared with you in her question. And I'm like, I have zero information. I can't possibly tell you what you need to be focusing on because I don't know what you're currently doing. I don't know what's working and what's not working, and what's working in different ways and what's not working in different ways. So I started in a totally different place. I literally could not answer her question. But here's the thing. There's a lot of coaches out there who would have answered her question, who would have said, you need to be getting a minimum of 150 grams of protein a day. You need to be getting probably not even just a baseline of 25 to 35 grams of fiber. You probably need to be close to 45. You need to be drinking half your body weight in ounces or more of water a day. Do those things and you'll be good to go. It's fucking bullshit. Like, not that those things don't have value or impact for certain people, but there is never, mark my words, never, I'm speaking in absolutes, a one-size-fits-all solution for what you need to be eating and how you need to be moving to A, lose weight, and B, deal with the weight gain of perimenopause. Are there bedrocks? Are there kind of foundational things you need to be focusing on and paying attention to? Yes. But what that looks like for each woman is totally different. And this is so important. So when she came and asked me this question, I'm like, I can't answer your question right now. I don't even have nearly enough information. We need to start building out your story. We need to start connecting some dots. And that's what we did. So here's what happened. So the first thing I asked her to do, I asked her to run me through a day of eating so that I could hear not just what she's eating, but also how she's eating and why she's eating. Because I've been talking about this ad nauseum lately, and you're never going to hear the end of it. The why and the how are the two aspects of eating that you are overlooking, that you have never addressed. You've changed the what countless times. You've lost track. Every diet, every program, every no sugar, low carb, blah, 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 whatever it is, that is changing the what. What you haven't changed are the how and the why. And I'm going to do a separate podcast episode about that coming up soon. So she ran me through her day of eating, and not just the weekday, the weekends as well, right? Because this is key. Weekdays and weekends can often be very different for people. So what might work on the weekday might not work on the weekend, and vice versa. And we don't need a plug and play solution that only works 2 days a week or 5 days a week. We need solutions that you can apply in any situation, right? That's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing in coaching. I was coaching her, right? So here's what it revealed. She would eat breakfast. She didn't eat all day long. She would get home at, I think around like 5 o'clock on the earlier side. She works at a university. And she would come home starving. And she would eat a shit ton of snacks before and while prepping dinner. Here's the interesting thing about this. What she shared is she's been eating that way for years. She has always done that. Eaten breakfast, not eaten during the day, come home starving, eaten a ton of snacks, made dinner, eaten dinner. And it has worked for her. So she was doing this before she gained the weight, and she's been doing it since she gained the weight. So her brain is going, I'm eating the same way that I've always been eating. Why suddenly now is it not working? This doesn't make sense. Of course it doesn't make sense. I'd be asking the same fucking thing. Like, I haven't changed what I'm doing here. What has changed inside of my body that I feel like I don't have control over? So here's what we started to uncover. Right? So she shared this with me, and immediately my brain is starting to connect dots, right? Which I'm going to kind of reveal to you what those dots were. But she said something interesting. She's like, the snacks that I'm eating when I get home, they're all, I'm using air quotes if you're listening and not watching on YouTube. If you're listening, healthy snacks, right? Things like an apple and peanut butter, chips and salsa, large quantities of fruits, energy bars, right? These are some of the things that she listed off that all feel healthy. And when people say healthy, what they really mean is nutritious, because any food can be healthy depending on how and why you're eating it. There's that how and the why again, just like any food can also be unhealthy based on how and why you're eating it. And here's a perfect example of that, right? These were all nutritious foods, but that she was eating in a way that really wasn't that healthy because of the quantity, because of how much she was eating. And the reason she was eating so much is because she's not eating all day. So of course she's starving. Of course she's going to get home and want to eat. It all makes perfect sense. But here's the thing about food. Food, we gain weight because we are in a caloric surplus, right? We are intaking more energy than our body needs to use in a day, or something about the way our body is using energy has shifted, which is a lot of what happens in perimenopause because of the cascading domino effect of the hormonal shifts. Very complex. I'm not an expert. I'm not even going to begin to talk about it, but that at the highest level is what happens. So you can be eating lots of nutritious foods, an apple and peanut butter, chips and salsa, fruit, energy bars, and a lot of nuts are another one, avocados. These things are what we call very calorie dense, meaning a lot of those foods have a lot of calories packed into a small amount of food. Peanut butter is a prime example of that. Peanut butter has a ton of nutrition in it, right? Lots of unsaturated fat. There's some protein. Nuts and nut butters have lots of nutrition. They also pack a lot of calories into a small amount of food. So you have like a couple spoonfuls of peanut butter, you could be eating 400 calories without even realizing it. Chips and salsa, right? Tortilla chips, there's all these grain-free and they're organic and all this stuff, and it makes you feel like it's super nutritious. Chips are really not that nutritious, right? They're chips, they're salty and crunchy and they taste really fucking good, but they're not giving you a lot by way of nutrition. Super easy to eat a lot of those, right? Energy bars, protein bars. I think I've done an episode. Maybe I will do a nice kind of like shorty summer episode about protein bars. I mean, those things pack a punch. You read the labels on those things, most of them are over 200 calories, between 200 and 300 calories, which inherently isn't a problem. It's just a very, very small amount of food. So if you pop one of those, you're eating those things 60 seconds flat. How long does it take to eat a protein bar? I mean, if it's 60 seconds, it's a lot. And the food is gone. and you've just ingested 200, 250, 300 calories, it's gone and it's not that filling. So she was eating foods that felt healthy, but she was eating a lot of them, right? And those calories are going to add up. And based on what she shared, was easily eating well over 1,000 calories in this short window of snacks because she's so hungry. And I want you to think about this visual. Think of an hourglass, right? Where you pour sand in and it gets narrower. And then slowly, if the bottom is closed, the sand starts to build up, right? Well, think about if the bottom of that hourglass was open and you're pouring sand in and it's just going through kind of the narrow part and just emptying out the bottom. That is what it is like to eat when you are starving. You're empty and you just keep putting in food and putting in food and putting in food and it doesn't accumulate. It's like it's draining out the bottom of an hourglass. And you have to eat so much to kind of get that hourglass to start to fill up that what happens is then it starts to fill up really quickly. It's like you're eating, and then it's suddenly someone closes off the bottom of the hourglass. You're still pouring in sand, but then all of a sudden, holy shit, the sand is starting to fill up that hourglass, and all of a sudden now the sand is like building up. It's almost all the way to the top. It just hits you. And you're still eating, so it's like you're still eating while you're feeling full, and all this is happening at once, and then you get stuffed, and you feel gross, and you've eaten way more than you need. This is why letting yourself get really hungry, because A, you're either not eating at all or not eating enough, will play a huge role in what you end up eating on the back end of that. And this is all about the how and the why, right? She's eating relatively nutritious foods. It's about the amounts that she's eating and why she is eating so much. You can go and change all the snacks that you want, and you can have a high protein breakfast, which she was, by the way, having high protein breakfast, and she was choosing nutritious snacks. So you can change that stuff all you want, but until you look at why you're eating what you're eating and how you're eating what you're eating, nothing will change for good. Fact, hard stop, that's it. So what this immediately uncovered, as soon as she told me that she was eating breakfast and not eating all day, I'm like, boom, that's a problem right there. So her original question is, what do I need to be focusing on? Protein, fiber, and water. I get 5 minutes worth of information for her. I'm like, none of those are your problem. What's your actual problem is the fact that you're not eating all day. And then you are intaking at least 1,000 more calories than you need to be in one sitting. And that is playing a role in your weight gain, right? And even though she had been doing this all this time before, perimenopause changes things. We know this. Your hormones, the shift in your hormones changes the way that your body is using the food that you eat. It's changing the way that your body stores fat. And so what worked a year, 5 years, 10 years ago is not going to work in perimenopause. There are aspects of it that may work. There might be overlaps, but you might have had a lot of freedom and flexibility. You might have been one of those women who's like, I can kind of eat whatever I want and not gain weight. I'm working with a client right now who was like that. And then suddenly she hit perimenopause and like, well, all bets are off. Holy fucking shit. I cannot do that anymore. I'm looking at a candy bar and I gained 3 pounds. And it's funny because this has been me my whole life. As someone who had PCOS, literally I would eat like 5 French fries and I'd be like, my pants are tight, and not in like a fucked up body image kind of way, in like a legit, I gained weight so easily. And some people are not like that, right? A lot of this has to do with genetics. And this doesn't happen to everyone in perimenopause, but it happens to a lot of women. And I'm hearing it from clients. I've been spending a lot of time like reading in threads. It's been like a goldmine of information. I get DMs from people. So I know a lot of you are out there struggling with this. So again, the snacks themselves are not the issue. It's how and why she was eating them. So immediately I'm like, you don't have a protein problem. You don't have a fiber problem. You definitely don't have a water problem. You're not eating all day problem. And the reason why she wasn't eating all day is because of her job and because of like some personality aspects. She wasn't like specifically trying not to eat. She wasn't restricting food. She wasn't doing it to lose weight. She was doing it because of like some aspects of her job and the way that she works, where she gets into a project and she gets into it and she feels this need to like, I got to finish the next thing. Let me just do this one more thing. When someone needs me, let me go do that. So this is where who you are as a person overlaps and plays a huge role into what you're eating. And we can't isolate these things. So again, another super important reason why just changing what you eat completely ignores so many crucial aspects of who you are as a living, breathing ecosystem of a human being. You can't ignore your behaviors across your day when you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to make changes for your health. You just can't. Like you are a person, a very complex person, and your behaviors outside of food impact how you eat, right? This is such a great example of that. So to build on that, the quote unquote solution is, okay, well, she needs to eat lunch. Yeah, she needs to eat lunch. But for me to just say to her, oh, well, Stacey, you just need to eat lunch. See ya. That's not a solution. That's not helping anything. Because how is she going to make that happen? This is where the behavior change part comes in, right? If it was so easy, if we all know pretty much. In this case, she didn't know what she needed to do. She was trying to do something. She didn't know what she needed to do. But a lot of times we do know what we need to do, but we don't do it, right? Because we don't have the skills to make it happen, because parts of our behavior are so deeply ingrained in who we are that changing that to do that thing is a huge undertaking. And so we don't do it. And then we beat up ourselves. I'm not motivated. I have no willpower. I'm not disciplined enough. It's not any of those things. It's that you don't have a step-by-step process to change your behavior, right? Ultimately, it's that simple. So I didn't just say to her, oh, just go eat lunch. Stacey, this is it. Boom. You're going to eat lunch. And then when you get home, you're going to be way less hungry, which means you're going to eat less food overall, which is going to reduce your overall caloric intake, which is going to create weight loss over time. That is what is going to happen. But me just saying to her, go eat lunch is not a solution. We walked through step by step how she was going to make lunch happen. And I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to share with you exactly what those steps were. Because again, if it was that easy, she'd already be doing it. So these are in no particular order, but this is what we talked through. And a lot of this is based on aspects of her personality that she shared with me, why she has not been eating during the day, what her work schedule is like, what her home life is like. We are incorporating all these different aspects of who she is as a person, right? As a human being, you are an ecosystem. One part of how you operate is impacted by something else that might seem separate, that we don't exist in like these individual silos, right? So your schedule during the day impacts how and why you eat, right? Your relationship, if you have a partner at home, and the stress level of that impacts how and why you eat. You know, the time that you have to wake up in the morning to get your kids off to school impacts how and why you eat. So you can't just start slapping Band-Aids on what you're eating without looking at all the rest of these factors of your life. So here's what we talked about. Okay. The very first thing we talked about was not eating lunch every day for the rest of her life. Again, it wasn't, oh, you just need to eat lunch, problem solved. No, because that is extremely overwhelming. If you've been doing something one way for years and years and years, to just say I'm going to do this thing now every day for the rest of my life is completely unrealistic, right? Human beings do not adapt in that way. It literally would be like walking into a gym, never having picked up a weight ever, and deadlifting 200 pounds. A, you couldn't do it, and B, you'd fucking really hurt yourself. But you have to ease into these things. You have to have a step-by-step strategy. So here was our step-by-step strategy. We said we are going to experiment. That language is huge in all of my work. You hear me talk about it all the time. We're going to experiment with having lunch for 5 days, 1 work week. Right? That felt like a very doable amount of time. We don't need to think beyond that. It felt like I can think ahead for 5 days and experiment. It also then gave her a very specific window within which to evaluate what was happening, right? Because then we had to identify, well, what is her measure of progress? How is she going to know? And what we were looking for is that, okay, on these 5 days when I have lunch, how does that impact my hunger level when I get home, the amount of snacking I'm doing, what I have for dinner, and what I eat after dinner, right? We are very crystal clear about that. You have to know, what are your measures of progress? How are you going to know if what you're doing is working? Doing this and like getting on the scale and seeing if she's losing weight is not the measure of progress for this. That is a higher level, bigger order measure of progress. Yes, the overall objective here is to get the scale to move in the other direction. But in the meantime, we're also just trying to get her to walk in the door and not feel like a starving lunatic and like she can't get enough food. That's a terrible feeling to have. You guys know that. Like, it's a terrible feeling. And then what happens is when you're done eating all that food, you then also feel terrible because you know you've eaten way more than you wanted or needed to. Okay? So 5 days. Second thing, again, not any particular order. We identified exactly where she was going to get lunch from, which was going to be the cafeteria. She works at a university. She's like, there's a great cafeteria here. It's actually really easy. And she already had an idea to prepay, like buy like, they have like a lunch card thing where you can prepay, because then she's investing money, right? She's putting some skin in the game and it gives her some extra accountability. And she had already done that, right? She had actually already bought a card. And so occasionally she would go and have lunch with coworkers. So we knew she's not going to prep lunch. She's not going to make lunch. She's not going to buy stuff at home for lunch, because those were all going to be additional barriers. And the objective here, the objective anytime you are starting something new, is to make it as easy as possible for yourself. Lower every barrier to entry. Make it as convenient and simple as you can so that you almost can't not follow through on it. So meal prepping, planning out homemade lunches at home, going shopping, forget it. That is not happening right now. Maybe we would work towards that, right? Like this was, we worked through all this in like 12 minutes, guys. It was pretty awesome. Like how quickly I can uncover where your missing links are with your how and your why and help you put together a plan for what to take action on. Another layer of accountability, 2 layers of accountability. One, she told her husband that she was doing this, so that at the end of the day, he could check again. He'd be like, hey, Stacey, did you get lunch today? Right? Accountability matters. And she set a timer and a reminder on her computer, right? Because getting up to go eat lunch was tough for her. And one of the big reasons why she wasn't doing it is because she would get so engrossed in her work and she would prioritize other people's requests for her to do things over her own personal well-being needs, right? So the first thing we need is some type of like a external reminder to say, like flash up on your computer and say, time to get lunch, because she's like, oh yeah, I'm just getting lunch at 12:30. She's not going to remember to do that. She's never done that before. Her brain is not going to think in that way. So we set up that external support. She told her husband, right, so he could ask her at the end of the day, but those are external, right? Those are coming from something or someone else. So here were 2 of the other key pieces that we talked about. These are more internally driven. I said to her, I'm like, when that timer goes off, right? The timer goes off. The timer doesn't make you get up from your desk and go to the cafeteria. You as an autonomous human being with agency has to do that, right? This is like weird analogy. This is like GLP-1s don't choose what you eat. They just reduce your appetite and the food noise so that then you can make the choices. The timer, the reminder, all that accountability stuff doesn't make you do the thing. It gives you the support to get you closer, but you have to actually do the thing. So how do you actually follow through and do the thing? Well, I said to her, I'm like, you're not going to want to get up and go to lunch. You are going to want to keep working on what you're working on. You're going to want to answer the phone call, answer the email, say just one more thing, because that's how you are. That's innate to the type of worker you are, the type of person you are. So acknowledging that in a positive way and saying, I'm a really hard worker. I really care about my job. And so it's hard for me to get up and go to lunch. Doing that right off the bat to kind of bring it in line with your values is super helpful. But then also just mentally preparing and saying, I know I'm not going to want to do this. Acknowledging that up front is huge. Because a lot of times we go into these changes and we're like, I'm going to be so excited to do this. This is going to be so fun. This is going to be so cool. It's especially with like starting to like work out, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be so excited. Like, no, you're not. You're really probably not. Maybe like the first day, because it has like really like shiny new object syndrome. But after that, it's going to be like, I don't want to fucking do this. But if you prepare yourself to know that you're not going to want to do it, and your expectation is not, oh, because the timer goes off, I'm going to just be so excited to run up and get lunch, then you're mentally prepared. She knew the timer's going to go off. She's not going to want to get up. And it's like, okay, I knew this was going to happen. I knew the timer was going to go off. I knew I wasn't going to want to get up. It's okay. It's okay that I don't want to get up. I'm going to do it anyway. And that right there, friends, is a huge part of this. Acknowledging that something might feel really uncomfortable, that you may not want to do it, and you can also do it at the same time. Being excited, feeling comfortable, and wanting to do something is not a prerequisite for doing that thing. I think this is something that we all really need to internalize, myself included. I'm going to say it again. Wanting to do something, feeling comfortable doing something, and feeling excited about doing something are not prerequisites for doing that thing. You can be unexcited, you can feel uncomfortable, you cannot want to do something, and you can do that thing. And we already do that every day. We go to work, we pay bills, we get up at a certain time, right? We do that as humans every day. We need to then leverage that capacity and start applying it to other areas of our life in a slow and steady process, which is what she was doing, okay? The last part of this that we worked through was what I call a future self strategy, right? And this is dealing with the resistance that's going to come up. So she's got she's got it in her calendar. She's got her reminder timer coming up on her computer and her phone. She's got her husband checking in with her at night. Those things are going to happen. She's still not going to want to get up and get lunch. She knows that. She's mentally prepared for that. She's like, okay, it's okay that I don't want to do this. I cannot want to do it, and I can do it anyway. And then the last piece that gets layered onto that is asking herself, and there are 2 ways into this, and she picked one of them. The question she's going to ask herself is, how will I feel if I don't eat lunch? And she knows the answer to that because that's what she's been doing. And that is what has been getting her deeper and deeper into this place in her body that feels really shitty. The flip side of that question could be, how will I feel if I do eat lunch? But she doesn't really have the evidence for that yet. She only has the evidence for what happens if she doesn't eat lunch, and she knows how shitty that is. So if she thinks ahead to her future self, the alarm goes off, I don't want to get up. Shit, I don't want to get up, but I know what's going to happen if I don't get up and I don't eat lunch. And she plays that out in her head. That's how she gets up from her desk. This is not magic. This is work. This is external support, and then the internal work that creates the dialogue, that you're basically having a conversation with yourself inside of your brain, right? You've got your brain trying to boss you around saying, I don't feel like doing this. I'm just going to sit here and keep going. And then you've got like the person that you are, in her case, like Stacy, talking back and saying, no, this is what I need to do. It's okay. I don't have to want to do it. I don't have to like doing this, but I know if I don't do it, this is what it's going to be my outcome, and it's not going to feel good. And it's doing that on day 1 and then seeing what happens, noticing what is my outcome? How did this work? And then using that information to help her move through day 2, and you start to build up. So as soon as you go through this process, even once successfully, you now have evidence that you are capable of doing this thing that you have not done in years, in some cases. And then it makes it a little bit easier. You still have all that structure in place, all those 6 strategies we walked through, but now you also have the evidence that you've done it. And that becomes an additional layer that slowly makes it a little tiny bit easier. Not a lot easier. Eventually it makes it a lot easier. When you get a lot more evidence, it makes it a lot easier. When you only have a tiny bit of evidence, it only makes it a tiny bit easier, right? These things like make sense logically. And this was our first 5-day strategy. This is not our long-term forever strategy. This was to get her through the first 5 days of doing this, which is probably just rolling around. We'd met a week ago. And she said she was going to email me. So hopefully I'll hear from her with a follow-up to see how this went, what worked, what didn't work. And then what would happen next is in coaching, if she would work with me one-on-one, we would then take what worked. We would continue to repeat that. Why did it work? Which elements of this strategy were really helpful? What didn't work? On which days didn't you follow through? And we would look back and see what happened over the course of her day. Why didn't she follow through? What did she have for her snacks? How did she felt? And then we would use that information to say, okay, well, this is what we need to tweak. We need this structure in place. We're going to experiment with this accountability setup, or we're going to play around with a different kind of internal skill to use when you face that resistance. And then over time, yes, we're looking at what she's eating, and how filling is her lunch, right? Maybe she had lunch every day, but some lunches she got home and she was still hungry and had a lot of snacks. Okay, well then we need to look at what's happening with that lunch. Is she missing some protein or fiber there? Did she have enough food? What was the timing of that meal? And maybe there were some meals that worked really well where she got home and she wasn't hungry for a single snack. She just made dinner and was done for the day. And then we want to understand, okay, what was it about those lunches that really worked, right? We're doing a lot of reflecting backwards and connecting the dots to help inform what comes next. And just to close this whole loop, this episode got pretty long, but I'm really excited about this episode, is the way that this will play a role in weight loss is because she was easily eating at least 1,000 calories from those snacks, probably more. Her lunch that she's going to eat at work is not going to be 1,000 calories. It's going to be way less than that. So if she's trading off 1,000 calories of snacks for, let's say, a 600 calorie lunch, there's a 400 calorie deficit right there. That will add up to weight loss, right? And the reason that her body has gained weight because of this, again, these hormonal shifts have a cascading domino effect in how our bodies respond to the food that we're eating and how and where they store fat. So what always worked for her no longer works. She needs to be in a caloric deficit. This is how we're going to do it. We're not going to say, oh, you have to cut out sweets. You have to cut out carbs, right? That would just be changing the what. We're not even going to first look at her initial question, which was, what do I need to be focusing on? Is it protein, is it fiber, is it water? Everything I'm reading is telling me something different. That's true. Everything you're reading is going to tell you something different. And so you can run around like a chicken with its head cut off, trying all these different things that ChatGPT or Claude or TikTok or another random podcast are telling you, or you can start to look at yourself as a complete ecosystem of a human being. You can start asking yourself, why am I eating and how am I eating? Not just what am I eating? And you can start to put together the pieces of your puzzle and connecting the dots, right? This is what we do in coaching, right? I have the expertise to listen to someone come to me with a question and immediately know what I need to ask to get the information that's necessary to uncover their problem, because what they think their problem is not really their problem. And there were the other women I spoke with that night was the same thing. Everyone came to me with a question. This is how I think I'm going to solve this problem. And I came into it from a totally different way. And it was like light bulb after light bulb after light bulb. In terms of walking away with an actual solution and actual next steps. So I hope you guys made it through. This is a long one. Thank you for being here. I hope you find this helpful. Reach out if you've got questions. Please give my podcast, my little wonderful podcast, a little star rating if you can. I super appreciate it. And more soon.